You are walking down a crowded city street. The sun is setting. You smell a very specific skunky aroma drifting from a passing group. It feels like a profoundly modern scene. You associate that scent with recent history. You picture counterculture movements, dispensaries, and modern rebellion. But the real answer is far stranger. That plant is not a modern discovery. Your ancestors were inhaling that exact same smoke before they even had wheels. Why does your brain react so strongly to a random weed? The secret lies deep inside your nervous system. You have something called the endocannabinoid system. It is a vast network of receptors scattered throughout your brain and body. This system regulates your mood, your memory, and your appetite. It acts as a delicate internal thermostat that keeps your physiological house in perfect balance against the chaos of the outside world. It uses internal chemicals to send these balancing signals. One of these chemicals is called anandamide. It is literally known as the bliss molecule. Why does a human biological system perfectly match the chemicals in a specific plant? The answer to that question requires a massive leap backward in time. The cannabis plant did not evolve to get you high. It evolved to survive. Dr. John McPartland, a researcher who studies the botanical origins of cannabis, traced the plant's lineage back nearly 28 million years. The plant first emerged on the Tibetan plateau. The environment there was brutal freezing and bombarded by intense sunlight. The plant needed armor to survive. It developed sticky resin glands as a biological defense mechanism against the elements. This resin acted like a natural sunscreen, protecting the fragile leaves from harsh ultraviolet radiation and deterring hungry herbivores from eating its stalks. The plant did not care about your brain. The chemical compounds inside that resin were just a happy accident of nature. Did your ancient ancestors immediately start rolling it up? For millions of years, the plant and your ancestors lived entirely separate lives. Early humans eventually stumbled upon this tall, fibrous stalk growing in the wild. They did not smoke it at first. They harvested it for its industrial strength. They twisted the incredibly tough fibers into ropes, wove them into crude textiles, and pressed the seeds to extract a highly nutritious oil. It was an industrial workhorse for early civilization. It was a tool for pure survival, helping them build shelters and catch fish. So when did someone decide to set this useful tool on fire and breathe it in? To find the exact moment of discovery, you have to travel to the Pamir Mountains in western China. The air there is incredibly thin. The landscape is desolate, unforgiving, and completely freezing. In 2019, an archaeologist named Dr. Yimin Yang made a stunning discovery at the Jerzenkel Cemetery. He was excavating ancient windswept tombs that were over 2,500 years old. Inside these graves, he found several wooden braziers. They were small, bowl-shaped vessels clearly used for burning materials. They contained the blackened, charred remnants of organic plant matter. When Dr. Yang analyzed the chemical signature of those ancient ashes, the results were entirely undeniable. It was cannabis. What were they doing with it in a graveyard? This was not the wild, low-potency hemp of the ancient world. The chemical breakdown showed unusually high levels of THC, the specific psychoactive compound that dramatically alters your state of mind. This was not a biological accident or a random fire. The people living in these remote mountains were deliberately selecting and cultivating plants with noticeably stronger psychoactive properties. They were selectively breeding for the high. During elaborate burial rituals, they placed heated stones inside the wooden bowls and laid the cannabis leaves directly onto the scorching rocks. They trapped the thick smoke in the enclosed space of the tomb. They were deliberately inhaling the fumes to commune with the dead. Why did they feel the need to violently alter their consciousness during moments of intense grief? The smoke offered a chemical bridge between the world of the living and the silent realm of the ancestors. It temporarily numbed the crushing pain of loss. It created a shared transcendent and deeply emotional experience for the mourners gathered in the dark. The high was not a recreational escape on a Friday night. It was a deeply sacred technology used to navigate the mysteries of mortality. How did this mountain ritual conquer the rest of the globe? From the high peaks of the Pamir Mountains, the smoke began to drift across the ancient world. Nomadic tribes became the primary distributors of this psychoactive plant. You might have heard of the legendary Scythians. They were fierce horse-riding warriors who absolutely dominated the Eurasian steppe. They were terrifying in battle and ruthless to their enemies. But they also had a profoundly intimate relationship with cannabis. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus actually wrote about their bizarre rituals in the 5th century BCE. He described how the Scythians would erect small tents made of thick woolen blankets propped up by wooden sticks. They would crawl inside these dark enclosed spaces. They would throw cannabis seeds and flowers onto glowing red-hot stones until the tent filled with thick, fragrant vapor. Herodotus noted that the Scythians would literally howl with joy as they inhaled the heavy smoke. They were essentially creating the world's first hotboxes. Was this just a party trick for ancient warriors? Dr. Robert Spengler, a prominent archaeobotanist, argues that these nomadic groups were absolutely crucial in spreading the plant across the continents. They traveled vast distances along the early unpaved routes of the Silk Road. They carried cannabis seeds carefully tucked into their saddlebags. They traded these seeds like precious currency with the cultures they encountered. The plant moved from the frozen mountain peaks down into the bustling, warm valleys of early civilization. It reached India, where it was transformed into a sacred milk-based drink called bhang, used in religious ceremonies. It spread to the Middle East, where compressed hashish became a staple of vibrant social and intellectual life. It slowly crept into Africa and eventually crossed the vast oceans to the Americas. The plant was remarkably adaptable and relentlessly resilient. It thrived in the dirt wherever humans decided to plant it. Why were humans so obsessed with carrying this specific weed everywhere they went? As the plant spread across the map, its relationship with your brain deepened and solidified. The endocannabinoid system in your body was already there doing its quiet biological work of keeping you alive. When the THC from the burning plant entered the lungs of your ancient ancestors, it slipped right into those pre-existing receptors like a perfectly cut key sliding into a master lock. It completely hijacked the internal communication network of the human body. It flooded the brain with dopamine, triggering massive cascades of reward and pleasure. It altered the perception of time, making frantic seconds feel like slow, luxurious minutes. It intensely magnified sensory input, making colors seem vastly brighter, foods taste significantly richer, and sounds echo with profound resonance. The plant had essentially hacked the deepest parts of the human nervous system. Does any other species on Earth have such a precise biological backdoor into your mind? The history of human consumption is largely a history of constantly changing contexts. What started as a sacred smoke-filled burial ritual on a freezing mountain peak evolved into a communal bonding exercise in a cramped Scythian tent. It shifted into a highly respected medical treatment in ancient Chinese pharmacopoeias designed to cure gout and absent-mindedness. It eventually morphed into a controversial artistic catalyst in the bustling absinthe-soaked cafes of 19th century Paris. Through all these incredible historical eras, the chemical composition of the plant remained fundamentally the same. The basic structure of the human brain remained entirely identical. Only the societal container around the smoke changed. How do we view that container today? Today, the context has shifted entirely once again into something highly sanitized. You see the plant perfectly packaged in sleek, brightly lit modern dispensaries that look like tech stores. You constantly read about its complex legal battles and shifting government regulations. You hear endless debates about its medical efficacy, its economic value, and its societal impact on the youth. The modern world has industrialized, legislated, and thoroughly commodified the ancient plant. We have isolated its complex compounds into sterile glass droppers and precise, brightly colored edible gummies. We have stripped away the wooden braziers, the hot stones, and the woolen Scythian tents. We have completely sanitized the ancient ritual of consumption. But the underlying biological transaction happening inside your skull remains exactly as it was millennia ago. What is really going on here? Think about the sheer mind-bending improbability of this entire biological relationship. A random plant growing on a high plateau develops a sticky resin just to survive the harsh sun. Millions of years later, a completely different bipedal species evolves a complex neural network just to regulate its internal organs. The species and the plant eventually cross paths in the dirt. The natural defense mechanism of the plant perfectly triggers the deepest pleasure and memory centers of the primate's brain. The primate then learns to cultivate the plant, carrying its microscopic seeds across continents, mountains, and oceans. The primate builds massive empires, fights brutal wars, and invents digital technology, all while carefully carrying this specific weed alongside its development. The plant essentially convinced the dominant species on the entire planet to guarantee its survival and global dominance. Who exactly domesticated whom? The next time you catch that skunky scent on the wind, pause for a moment and take a breath. Look past the modern associations and the sleek dispensary packaging. Look past the politics, the pop culture, and the massive commercial industry. You are not just smelling a passing trend or a modern rebellion. You are smelling the ancient ashes of a Jerzenko burial tomb. You are smelling the thick vapor inside a Scythian warrior's tent. You are witnessing a 28-million-year-old biological lock meeting a perfectly shaped botanical key. You are walking down a crowded city street, smelling a very specific aroma, and realizing that your brain has been waiting for that exact chemical signal since the dawn of humanity.